This is Chris from Play Comics, and you're listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 267, Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, movie review. Chris McBrien along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. Now, in keeping with our recurring theme this season of going back and reviewing movies that are celebrating major milestones, we're going to be reviewing 1983's Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. We'll see if it stands up after 40 years. But before we get to that, Derek, any pop culture you've been able to take in this past week, my friend?
Yeah. Hey, Chris. A little bit. I think I had mentioned on some of the more recent podcasts that I had lost my access to Netflix because, you're not allowed to share passwords anymore. But recently I have reacquired Netflix and have been starting to binge things that I had not had an opportunity to get to.
Very nice.
So I've started watching two different series. I finished one. I'm halfway through the other one, and I want to tell you a little bit about them because they're both pretty good. The first one is a relatively new series. I think it just dropped in the last couple of weeks, and it's called Who is Aaron Carter? And the premise of this one is, and this happens in the first 5 minutes of the first episode, so not a spoiler, a mom and her little girl are in a grocery store, and the grocery store is being robbed, so they hide. And the daughter, unfortunately, doesn't hide as well as the mom, and one of the robbers points a gun at the little girl, and then the mom jumps into action and basically disarms the guard, beats the crap out of him, and ends up killing him in the process. And then you start to realize, oh, this mom isn't just a single stay-at-home. Well, she's not stay-at-home, but a single mom who's a part-time teacher. Like, this mom has a history. And so then she's the Aaron Carter of the title. And it's like, well, who is Aaron Carter? And then you find out, like, she's got this mysterious past, and she can clearly, like, fight. And it seems like she's maybe a spy or a police officer or a criminal or there's something going on. So there's this mystery element, but at the same time, she doesn't know what's going on, and neither do we as the audience. So it was interesting. It ran 7 episodes. Most of the episodes were around 45 minutes, so it didn't take that long to binge through. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. And honestly, I didn't know a single person in the cast. No, that's a lie. There was one person who makes a guest appearance in, I think, like the 4th or 5th episode that I'm like, oh, I think that's so-and-so. But otherwise, I didn't know anybody. It takes place in Barcelona, and most of the cast is either British or Spanish, and it is primarily English. So don't worry about that. Not a lot of subtitles, but no, it was quite good. I really liked it, and it was nice to see a woman kicking ass for a change and not having to be the damsel in distress. So who is Aaron Carter? Definitely 2 thumbs up from me on Netflix.
And so if I can jump in. So I'm assuming that's Aaron Carter, E-R-I-N. Aaron
yes,
Carter.
Not to be confused with the pop singer.
That's what I thought. So you're like, who is Aaron Carter? I'm like, didn't he like die or something like that? Or it was his brother Nick or something? Know. And I was like, what's this all about? I thought it was Aaron, like A-A-R-O-N Carter. No. But okay, so.
Screw the patriarchy, man. You hear Aaron and you think of a guy. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Then the other series I'm watching.
Just because it's a famous name, Aaron Carter was a guy.
I know. I'm just busting. Yeah. The other one that I started watching, it actually came out a few months ago, and I remember people talking about it when it dropped. And again, because I didn't have Netflix, I didn't know what they were talking about. It's based on a novel, and it's a series called The Night Agent. And the night agent in question is basically he works in the White House. And he works in this secure room in the basement, and there's a telephone. Think like the bat phone. There's no phone number. There's no buttons or dials on. It's just an old school telephone with a light. And you find out that this is the absolute lowest position that an FBI officer can have. And the idea is if a spy ever gets in trouble, they'll call this night agent hotline, and his job is just to answer it, take down their code phrase, and then send for reinforcements. And when he takes the job, they basically say this is sort of like a punishment assignment because the phone never rings. And sure enough, in the first episode, the phone rings and shenanigans ensue. And this guy who's on the list basically has to jump into action and do stuff despite the fact that he's, this very low level person who has this, problems in his past, which has put him on the list in the first place. So no, I'm halfway through it. It's 10 episodes. I feel already by episode 5 it's kind of dragging a little bit, but I've heard very good things. Apparently it's based on a book. I was reading the review of the book and it got very good reviews. So I'm really looking forward to watching the end of this one. So 2 good series that I'm really enjoying. Who is Aaron Carter was really good, and The Night Agent I'm really enjoying. Both of those on Netflix.
Awesome. Apparently, Derek, we are the number 2 rated film and TV podcast in Mauritius.
I don't know what that is.
Do you have family in Mauritius by any chance, Derek?
Well, I don't think so, but is that a place?
It's an island country in the Indian Ocean, just east of Madagascar.
Well, why didn't you say so?
Did you take geography in school? Do not offend the people of Mauritius, Derek. We're number 2 over there. They like us.
All right. I kind of wonder what number 1 is. Who's beating us?
God only knows. I wouldn't normally bring this up, okay? But, I mean, tomorrow is my birthday. So, I mean, stop, turn that off. Stop it. It's not, the only reason I bring it up is that tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and guess what? I'm going to be Wilford Brimley in Cocoon old, Derek.
You're going to be 65?
He looks like he's 65 in that movie. I can't believe it. I'm going to be as old as Wilford Brimley was when he did Cocoon. But I'm not going to look like that, I hope. Although I was out the other night and I was with a friend and we were at this restaurant and this guy comes over to me and he's like, I've been looking at you all night. I just had to come over and talk to you. And I'm thinking, like, does he know me from somewhere? Like, does he recognize me from something? I don't know. This is weird. And he's like, you're like the spitting image of my best friend. I'm like, oh. And he pulls out his phone and shows me a picture of this guy that's like 75 years old. Like, jeez, man, you got to be kidding me. It just sucks. So anyway, I did want to say, so for my birthday, I have a request.
Okay.
For anyone and everyone who listens to this podcast, I'd like to ask for a birthday gift from all of you. Please take 2 minutes and go into iTunes or onto IMDb, because we're there, and rate the podcast for us. You know, you can give us a rating out of 5 on iTunes or a rating out of 10 on IMDb. We actually have an IMDb page, Derek. You know, we made it to the big time, you know, just ask the citizens of Mauritius. So that's my pop culture thing this week. I'd like to ask for a birthday gift. 2 minutes of your time. Go either iTunes or IMDb or both if you got 4 minutes, I guess. Just rate the podcast, you know. We do this show not for money. We do it, you know, each and every week. We do it for everybody that takes time out of their day to listen. So we just ask that you take a few minutes and you just rate the show for us. So anyway, on that note, I want to say thank you.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
Derek, since we're doing Monty Python's The Meaning of Life tonight, I thought I should do a meaning of life dad joke for everyone.
Okay.
Okay. So Derek, what do you call a dinosaur that ponders the meaning of life?
Chris McBride.
No, a Philosophosaurus. No?
No.
Yeah.
Kelly Clarkson!
In your face, in the face.
Oh, got to be, you know,
And we're going to do a police lineup.
Back yourself a pro. Let you get that gray matter back before you get TCB in, man.
The real money's in f***ing fart jokes.
They go down and smack 'em, yak 'em.
Well, what do you expect? They're Canadian.
Why are you always in such a bloody rush, man?
But he has a
Yeah, looky here. I can dig some of that grease to chomp it on some butter, drag it through the gun.
Uncle
Ooh, I'm glad that's not me.
I hate to break it to you, lady, but you're sucking on my arm. That might be one of the dirtiest drops ever. My God. And totally un-PC. Okay, Derek, there's an age-old question that's been pondered by philosophers and artists and philosophosauruses, by the way.
Apparently.
For as long as we've been around. And it's, what is the meaning of life? So, Derek, you're an intellectual. What's the meaning of life?
I have no idea. Oh, what is the thing they asked Conan? To drive your enemies before you and to hear the lamentations of the women?
Oh, that works.
Something like that. I don't remember. They ask him what is best in life.
Oh, there you go.
To see your enemies dead before you. Sorry, I screwed up the bit. I should have looked it up beforehand. I knew you were going to ask me that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I don't know. Like, I mean, I think it's important to have a philosophy of life that helps you understand who you are. You know, I guess. And I always think back to like Jaws. Remember when Hooper says the meaning of life, at least for sharks, is to swim and eat and make little sharks. And at the most basic level, I think you could probably apply that to humans, but since humans have a capacity for, so much more, like complex reasoning and language and introspection and all that stuff, there's more than just eating and making babies. And so Monty Python took a stab at answering this age-old question back in 1983 with Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. But before I think we get into this movie, I think it's worth having a little bit of background on Monty Python. What do you think, Derek?
Yeah, I think that's important to set the stage. Although, in all fairness, people who listen to this podcast are probably pretty well versed in Monty Python. But you never know. We might have some Monty Python virgins. So give us a history lesson.
I think
Chris.
even if you know Monty Python, you like Monty Python, it's still maybe you don't know everything about how they were formed and stuff, because they were formed as a comedy troupe back in 1969, and they, of course, is the British comedians John Cleese, Graham Chapman, Michael Palin, Eric Idle, and Terry Jones. Terry Gilliam was the lone American of the group. He was born in Minneapolis. He was educated in LA, and he became a cartoonist before he moved to England and met up with the other troupe members. But they were all big fans of this British TV show called Do Not Adjust Your Set. And Gilliam actually worked on the show as an animator, and then all 6 of them got together and they attended a taping of the show one night. And then after the show, they all just kind of started talking and stuff, and they formed the comedy troupe from there. So the name, Monty Python. Originally, when they got the gig on BBC, the studio, wanted to call the show John Cleese's Flying Circus. Cleese didn't want his name out front for lots of different reasons.
Yeah.
So he didn't want to be like the front man. And he also, I think, selfishly, if it bombed, he didn't want his name attached to it, right? So they said, we got to come up with like an absurd name. And that was Monty Python, because why not, right? So the TV show Monty Python's Flying Circus ran from 1969 to 1983. And the troupe officially made 5 films together under the Monty Python banner. They made And Now for Something Completely Different in 1971, which was just a collection of sketches from the TV show, really. They did Monty Python and the Holy Grail in 75, Life of Brian in 79, Monty Python Live at the Hollywood Bowl in 1982, and that was a live recording of their sketches. It's really good. And then Monty Python's The Meaning of Life in 83. Now, the other thing is that the members of the troupe also appeared in a bunch of movies that were not Monty Python films, like Jabberwocky in 77 and Terry Gilliam's Trilogy of Imagination, Time Bandits from 81, which I just love that movie, and Brazil in 85 and The Adventures of Baron Munchausen in 88. And then there was also Yellowbeard in 88 and A Fish Called Wanda, Yellowbeard was 83 and Fish Called Wanda was 88. But if you look at the work that they did on especially the TV show, some of the most influential stuff in the history of comedy. It shaped everything from Saturday Night Live to South Park and everything in between. And I found a quote, John Oliver, the comedian.
Yep.
He said it best. He said, and I quote, "Writing about the importance of Monty Python is basically pointless. Citing them as an influence is almost redundant. It's just assumed." And I think that's a pretty good quote,
Yeah, it's a good quote.
Like, they were such an influence on comedy, and it was just they were a Gen X staple. So I felt we needed to do something of theirs on the podcast here. But this season, we're only looking at movies celebrating major milestone anniversaries, and the only movie of theirs that falls into that category is The Meaning of Life, because it came out in 83. So it's like 40 years since it came out. And I want to get your take on it, but I think of all their movies, I actually think it's their worst movie. And you could make the argument that this movie isn't actually all that good at all. But like I say, I wanted to get a conversation about Monty Python into the show just so much that I decided to nominate this movie for review here on the podcast. But going back and watching it after 40 years, what was your initial take on it?
So my relationship with Monty Python, before I get into that, my relationship with Monty Python is sort of a Johnny come lately. I didn't discover them until probably when I went away to university. And again, it's one of those things where somebody you meet who says, "Oh, you're into movies. What do you like? What do I like? Let's look at your videos. Let's look at my videos." And then inevitably you get around to, "Have you seen these Monty Python movies?" And my answer was, "No, I don't know what these are." And so that was my introduction to Monty Python, would have been in the mid 90s, which by then, I mean, the show was off the air and all the movies had long happened. So you were I'm experiencing them years after the fact. And I enjoyed what I saw at the time. I got a chance to look at some of the older television sketches. I mean, we didn't have YouTube at that time, so you couldn't just go on the internet. But a lot of people had a lot of the videos. Monty Python and the Holy Grail was on constant repeat in the dorm over and over again. So that one got viewed hundreds of times. And then one of my friends actually had the CD, Monty Python Sings, and it's a recording of all of their most famous songs. So I actually got to know the songs before I saw a lot of the sketches. So when I finally saw the sketches that the songs belonged to, I knew the songs, and I found that was an interesting way to experience some of the comedy, knowing the music and then getting to see the visuals that went with it. I'm a fan. There was actually a really great 6-part documentary series that they put out in 2009 that I watched and thoroughly enjoyed, and just, you know, by then it's literally everything you could ever want to know about Monty Python and then some. But I don't find that they're the kind of like, their movies aren't really things that I go back to now and watch that frequently. I'm aware of them, but you know, we talk about comfort films, or, you know, what are your 3 favorite movies you'll watch over and over again? Oh, Star Wars is on, I'm going to watch it, kind of thing. Monty Python's never my go-to. I mean, I like it, but it's not my favorite. And I realized when we went to watch The Meaning of Life this week, I couldn't find it on any of the streamers. So I thought, oh boy, well, let me go check the personal collection. And lo and behold, I had the 20th anniversary DVD special edition collection of the Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. So I was like, great. So it was the 20th anniversary, and we're watching it 20 years after that for the 40th anniversary. So that was an interesting sort of parallel. I realized that I had only seen this movie once before, because when I watched it again this week, a lot of it was new to me. I just had no memory of it. I knew the musical numbers simply because I knew the songs so well. But the overwhelming majority of this movie, I felt like I was watching it for the first time. And let me tell you, it was terrible. This movie was awful. I couldn't believe how bad it was. I was like watching it going, is it almost over? Oh, it's only been 20 minutes? Come on, it can't be that much longer. Oh, how much longer now? Oh, it's only been 40 minutes? Jeez, when is this garbage going to end? It was terrible. I couldn't get over how bad it was.
Like I say, it's not one of their best. That's for sure. It's their worst. Music,
I would have just like, I couldn't believe we owned this DVD. I said to myself after I finished watching, I'm like, my wife must have bought this, because there's no way I would have bought this movie knowing I'd only seen it once before and realizing it was this bad. Like, I can't believe that 20 years ago, if I had watched it then, I would have enjoyed it enough to want to own it. So, yeah, I was thoroughly disappointed. I did a lot of the reading after I watched the movie, and it seems that even the troupe felt that this was not their best outing, that a lot of the movie lacked cohesion. There was a lot of criticism like that the troupe themselves threw on this movie. And now I get the sense that in the moment they're trying to make money, so they were promoting it pretty well. But I got the sense that as time has passed, a lot of disparaging words were said about this film, and you know what? Most of those are pretty accurate.
So in 1983, the top 10 at the box office were Return of the Jedi, Tootsie was number 2, even though that came out in December of the year before. Flashdance was 3, Trading Places 4, War Games was 5, Octopussy, Staying Alive, oh God, that movie was awful, Risky Business at 8, Mr. Mom was 9, and number 10, rounding out the top 10, was National Lampoon's Vacation. So quite a few good movies.
That's a pretty good list.
Yeah. And so this film was made on a budget of $9 million. It made just under $15 million at the domestic U.S. box office. It finished in 48th place between Private School and Cheech and Chong Still Smoking.
I've seen both of those movies.
Yeah. So this film actually ended up with $42 million in worldwide grosses. So it wasn't a hit at all. Probably a combination of a few things. I think if you look back, audiences didn't exactly flock to Monty Python movies. You know?
No, not in America. No.
Even worldwide. Like, I mean, Life of Brian took in $19 million domestically, U.S. Holy Grail only made $1.6 million at the U.S. box office. So American audiences didn't flock to these movies. And I think also the fact that The Meaning of Life was rated R. So the audience was very limited, you know, and then you add to that the fact that the movie isn't all that good. You know, it wasn't successful. And it's funny. You look back, and I don't want to disparage Monty Python anyway, because as influential as they ended up being, they were never big box office champs. That's for sure. The influence they had was more on the artists than it was on mainstream audiences.
Yeah, I'll agree. And I mean, to your point of the John Oliver quote, like it's hard to believe that anyone who's in comedy today isn't influenced in some way by Monty Python's legacy. But as is often the case, the person who sort of beats the path first, is often not appreciated until way in the future as other people have retread upon that path. So, yeah.
This movie is really, really weird at points too.
It is bizarre.
It's funny because it's got a couple of really strong parts in it, but it also has some really bad parts. It gets very uneven. I think you mentioned that too.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the things that kept appearing when I was reading it, was they were saying that it was, obviously the troupe, it's a sketch comedy troupe. So they're basically trying to make a movie that's just full of sketches.
Yes.
Which we've seen some of those. Those kinds of movies often don't do very well. And often it's because of the quality of the material. But there are some that work very well, and that this format does work under the right circumstances. But unfortunately with this one, I think, you've got a couple of diamonds in the rough, a couple of sketches that stand out and that sort of stand the test of time. But for the most part, there's just a lot of weirdness. I got the sense it was almost like, and I don't know if there's any truth to this, but to me, it felt like the troupe had been together a long time. It almost felt like they had a contractual obligation to make this movie. So they sort of went into the file and said, what do we have left in this cabinet that we haven't used before? And they're like, well, these are all the sketches that we couldn't really make work on the TV show. And they're like, well, why don't we dust off a few of them? We got to fill 90 minutes. That's what it felt like. Mm-hmm. Again, don't know if that's actually what happened, but like I said, a couple of them were good. Most of them were not.
Let's go up and down with this, because the opening of the film, it starts out with that short film that's just plain bizarre and not funny at all. It's called The Crimson Permanent Assurance. So this was originally written to be an animated segment in like section 5 of the movie. But Terry Gilliam thought it would play better as live action. Mm-hmm. So they decided to turn it into this like short film which was something that was very common, by the way, with British films all the way up until the 70s. And it's this short film. Apparently, it's like a bit of a commentary on unchecked capitalism. And I guess that's fine and all, but like, what the hell is it doing here in this movie? It has nothing to do with the meaning of life, So it's got these old men in this office building that work like slaves, and then one of them gets fired, so they hold a mutiny. And then, the one thing I did laugh at was, in sort of typical British fashion, that the leader of the mutiny is like barking out orders, and he's like, you and you break out the weapons, you and you get the riggings, and you put the kettle on. I laughed because you gotta have tea, right? It's British,
of course. So
they unmoor the building, so now it's like a ship, and they set sail for what looks to be Lower Manhattan. And then they attack this corporate head office. And I don't know if you recognize it or not, but the head executive guy was Matt Frewer.
Matt Frewer, yeah.
Max Headroom from TV. Now, he was huge there for a while when he did Max Headroom. But this was 83, so it was before that.
Yeah, this would have
been his like acting debut, actually. But so anyway, the old men, like, they pillage all these corporate offices, and then they fall off the edge of the earth because it turns out the earth is flat. There's still people around today, by the way, that believe that, Derek.
But sorry, just to circle back, I find this is always, I mean, you can speak to this better than I can, but I find this is what I always hear about sketch comedy is the hardest part of any sketch is figuring out how to end it. And I find that Monty Python often does this better than other sketch troupes, where they just cut to an animated short, or like in this case, the thing falls off the edge of the world, or you have the big giant foot that comes down and steps on everyone. Like, they don't have to explain why it's ending. They just do something ridiculous. So I actually chuckled at the idea of the office that became a ship that fell off the side of that fell off the flat earth. Like, that made me chuckle, because to me, that was very Monty Python-esque. I would have been probably more disappointed if they had come up with a more refined way to end the sketch. But yeah, to your point, like, the thing runs almost 15 minutes, and with the exception of the guys on the rigging washing the windows when they finally get to the promised land, none of the members of the troupe are even in the sketch.
Right.
Can you call it a sketch? I guess it's 15 minutes. It's more of a short film.
Yeah.
So, and that was what I kept thinking too, is like, it's kind of a bold choice to put this at the beginning of your movie. It's not funny. It's maybe amusing or interesting. You can see the social commentary in it and the ridiculousness of some of it, but to not have any of your primary stars and familiar faces show up for 15 to 20 minutes in, like, that's a interesting choice, and I don't necessarily know if it worked.
Well, and to your point of them not ending their sketches, in a clean way, in a gratifying way for the audience, they were known for that. They were known for a lot of their sketches on their old show, they would just end. There was I think a few sketches back in the day where John Cleese would just turn and let's just end this thing, and then we just end it. It was a thing.
Well,
Kids in the Hall really picked up on that too.
Yeah.
They were similar that way. They didn't always have a gratifying ending to their sketches, and I think it was sort of influenced by Monty Python as well.
Oh, no doubt. But think of the movie, the Monty Python, the Holy Grail. Think of the ridiculous ending to that. Again, it's you were watching it sort of going, where is this going? And then it's just this bizarre outcome. It's almost like the end of Blazing Saddles, where it just becomes a big musical number.
Right.
So sometimes sometimes it works. And in a lot of the shorter sketches for Monty Python, it does. So again, if you're a fan coming into this, you almost expect that that's how some of these sketches are going to end, in just some ridiculous fashion.
I was thinking when at the end, when that building falls off the edge of the earth, and then the credits run for this short film.
Yeah. I
can only imagine back in 1983, audiences, especially American audiences, they must have been like, what the hell am I watching? It must have confused people. Because I was confused even watching it. It's a bizarre way to start a movie, I think. So then it goes to the fish in the restaurant aquarium. And I actually like this concept.
Yeah, me too.
I like how they personify the fish. They're all proper and social. Yeah. Good day. Good day. Oh, look, Howard's being eaten.
Yeah.
And they're like, is he? Oh, it makes you think, doesn't it? I think this would have been a much better way to start off the movie. Cold open with the fish in the aquarium. Yep. Because Monty Python basically originated that whole cold open thing in their TV series. Mm-hmm. SNL really picked up on it, but they started it. This would have been a perfect way to start the film. I think better than that stupid short film. So, and it plays right into the whole meaning of life thing, because it makes you think, doesn't it? I don't know. Mm-hmm. So then it goes into Miracle of Birth, and there's the scene with the modern world with the doctors and the advanced machine
that goes bing,
ping, and then they contrast that with olden day England with the poverty and the Catholics that have 50 kids. The baby falls out of the woman when she's doing the dishes. Yeah. Monty Python never shied away from offending religions. If you think Life of Brian was pretty much 90 minutes of complete offensive content for Christians. But I actually liked how they contrast the Catholics and the Protestants in this scene. And the dad walks into the room after he's working in the mine or whatever. And there's 50 kids in the room. And he's like, oh, I've got an announcement to make. Go get the others. I'm like, the others? Oh my God. I was laughing at that. And then he's like, we're destitute. We got to sell the lot of you for scientific research. I was like, oh my God. And then they sing that song, every sperm is sacred. And so it's better to have 50 kids and sell them into scientific research than it is to use birth control. And that's the comment they're making. And then you've got these Protestants next door that are all prim and proper.
I laughed at the Protestants more this time. Yeah. Again, because I knew the song, the Every Sperm is Sacred song. I knew it so well. Although I didn't remember all the visuals from the movie, which I enjoyed watching. That's one of the sketches that stands out, and in large part because of the song. But I didn't remember the Protestant part right after it. So that part I really did laugh at.
It was funny. They're like, we've got 2 children and we've had sex twice. And then the guy's like, well, I could have used a condom if I had one. Have you got one? He laughed at that, and he's like, that's not the point. If I wanted to, I could go down to the pharmacy, hold my head high and say, I wish to buy a condom. In fact, I think I'll take a French tickler. And his wife's like, would you? Yeah. That whole part was so funny because it was I think it was one of the strongest parts of the movie.
I agree. And what I kept, as I was watching it, kept thinking this dynamic reminds me of Sheldon and Amy in The Big Bang Theory. Like that's all I kept thinking. And now, obviously this came well ahead of that, but to your point about Monty Python influencing other things, like not that this is a very not that this is a unique concept, but just the way that the couple interacted and reacted with each other, the obliviousness of the man versus, you know, just stating it, and then the woman like clearly was like, oh well, yes, could you, would you? That was where my mind went as I was watching this, was like, oh, it's good to see that some things can be done again and again and again in a different context and still be funny.
Yeah, that's a good comparison to make there. I like the contrast between these different religions and how they view sex and life in general and stuff. Like the Catholic says to his kids, I'm not allowed to use birth control. And one kid's like, well, couldn't you cut your off? And he's like, oh, no. God would see right through that trick. Yeah. It's off to science experiments for the lot of you. So, I mean, that was all pretty funny. And the thing is, it got me thinking, it's always the same old thing. You know, it's like fear of God. How they just use religion to scare people and control them, you know? Yeah. So then it goes into the university sex ed class, which I thought was another strong part of the film. I like how John Cleese is giving orders to the students and how they got to move their clothes down to the lower peg unless they've got like a younger brother who's walking home after doing his homework, and write a note to the headmaster before you walk through the field and after you eat lunch. And you could totally tell that he's just improvising the whole thing, because he repeats it a few times and it's always different, you know, except for the moving your clothes to the lower peg. And then he starts his lesson about sexual intercourse, and he's like, okay, does anyone know what happens after you take your clothes off? You put them on the lower peg, sir. And that made me laugh out loud when that guy said that. But I thought this was an amazing idea for a sketch, or a scene in a movie, I guess. The teacher explains sex ed by actually having intercourse with his wife in front of the class. And I'm like, oh my God, how outrageous. But like, again, as a demonstration, not as a you know, it's the mechanics, not the emotional enjoyment, the physical enjoyment of it. It was just the, you know, tab A into slot B, quite literally. You know, as you'll notice, the penis is more or less erect. More or less, yeah. But again, it just shows the movie's so uneven, because it's got these little glimpses of promise in the sketches, and then it just goes to something else and just falls flat, because it goes right from that sex ed scene into the rugby match. Yeah, which to me made no real sense. I guess to show that life's unfair. And it's rigged against you at times, I guess, that you're always outmatched or something. I don't know. So one thing that kind of came to mind is this whole idea of stream of consciousness. So one thing I always liked about Monty Python, especially their old TV sketches, was stream of consciousness. So the sketches that they did never took the form of the standard joke telling that we're used to. You know, like they didn't always have that setup and a punchline. Instead, they used to always use the stream of consciousness approach to storytelling, especially Gilliam. And which is, you know, crafted the way, you know, people think, you know, like a lot of storytelling is done very in a linear way. You know, it's very straightforward, you know, like you're trying to convey a message. So, I mean, it makes sense. But in stream of consciousness style, you do things more the way people really think and go about their day. Like, I mean, if you get up in the morning, you get out of bed and you go to work, that would be like a linear storytelling. But stream of consciousness is more like, you know, you wake up, you look down at your feet, you wonder if you're late. You think, oh man, I'm always late. You know, why am I always late? Oh, I got to skip breakfast. Oh, I hate missing breakfast. Oh, I'm going to be miserable all day. Why is the dog barking? Oh my God, my shoelace is untied. Like that whole stream of consciousness, I just love, because it's the way humans think. But storytelling never reflects that. But stream of consciousness does. And for me, it's always been something Monty Python was good at. But here, it's just like I kept hoping to get more of it, but it just came off as disjointed and uneven. Like I say, this is not their best work. It really misses the mark overall. Yeah. And even the parts that I did find humorous or amusing, it wasn't laugh out loud. Like I didn't once laugh out loud at something. Again, not that I expect every part of this movie to be laugh out loud, haha, funny. I felt that it really didn't hit that at all. Like I had a few sort of like, that's amusing. Like sort of that was the extent of the humor factor for me. Or, it was more the ones that worked. I was thinking more to myself, that's clever. Like it wasn't so much, haha, this is funny, as much as it's, that's an interesting way to look at this. That's clever.
Again, maybe it's that it's 40 years old. Like I find sometimes humor is contextual. It very often is timely based on the time in which it's presented. It's often social commentary on what's happening in the world around you. And I mean, after 40 years, the things they were talking about have obviously, some of them have changed. Some of them probably have not. So I had to take that into consideration, and the fact that they're British, right? Like this is, I think a lot of their source of their inspiration comes from life in England and London, which you got to, you sort of on its face think, well, it's similar enough to what we are, but it is a different country, different economics, different history, different way of looking at things. And while I like to think that I get British comedy, I'm sure there's times when I just absolutely do not, simply because I don't have that frame of reference.
So just to go back to the stream of consciousness storytelling for a second, because I was thinking that World War I trench scene, perfect example of how you do this, right? The soldiers are about to go over the edge of the trench, and the one says to the captain, that he's really enjoyed fighting alongside him. And so have the others. So they decided to take up a collection. Yeah. They bought him this delicate glass clock. And then the other guy's like, oh, I bought you one too. It's like a grandfather clock. And then the captain's angry because they've got a war battle to fight, right? And then the soldiers think he's ungrateful. And they're like, well, he even made you a cake. And then so the captain gives in, and then they set up a table to have cake, and everyone gets shot because their guard's down. So it's like perfect sort of stream of consciousness storytelling, which I thought was good. Another one I thought was good was the drill sergeant scene. I think it is a great scene, but it plays as a sketch. It's not connected to the movie at all. Like, what the hell does it have to do with the meaning of life?
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I didn't enjoy that one at all. It was sort of a one gag joke that went on way too long, and I think it was good because Michael Palin is just so over the top, and he needs to be to make the scene work and to sell it. But I love how he's like loud and authoritarian, and he barks orders, and they're like, we're gonna be marching up and down the square unless you've got something better to do, which nobody's gonna do it. He's taunting them. So anyone have something they'd rather be doing? And the one guy's like, actually, I'd rather be home with the wife and kids. Oh yeah, home with the wife and kids. All right, off you go. I'm like, what? Like, it actually made me laugh. And the other guy's like, well, I've actually been learning the piano, sir. He's like, the piano? You'd rather be practicing? Yes, sir. All right, off you go. So again, I thought it was a great sketch, a great idea, but it was just disconnected from the rest of the movie. So again, like there were moments that were like pretty good, like, but they just didn't fit together. And then I thought things got really weird in the second half of the movie. Like really weird. Yeah, the whole scene with where they're battling the Zulus and stuff, I'm like, I was so disinterested. I was like, where is this going? Like, it's not funny. Like, what are they trying to accomplish here? I was starting to get lost, and then they end it where he unzips the costume and he goes, we're in the middle of the movie. And I'm like, okay, that to me was a very Monty Python-esque way to end the sketch. But
right.
The 10 minutes or so leading up to it, it's like, is this almost over yet? Oh my God, we're not even halfway.
Typical British humor, because the guy's missing his leg. It's like, oh, it's nothing. It's nothing at all. It'll
grow back, right?
Yeah, it'll grow back. And I think it was just a fly or something that bit it. And but the whole, I don't know if it was a dream sequence where they're like, where's the fishy fish? Where could he be? I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, it was just so bizarre. I don't know what their affinity for fish is. It came up again in A Fish Called Wanda, too. Maybe it's an ongoing thing for them. I don't know. So there was the liver scene where the guy comes in for the man's liver. Apparently, he filled out a donor card or something. And then he's like, well, I'm not done with it yet. I'm still using it. And then they cut it out of him, and there's blood everywhere. Mm. I did laugh because when John Cleese is like wooing the wife, he's like, yeah, are you going to remarry? You're an attractive woman. And she's like, no, I don't think I'll get hitched again. Can we have your liver then? Like, that made me laugh. Because I like when things take kind of a right turn. It always makes me laugh. Yeah. So then, they have the great musical number there. Yes, where he takes him out and walks through space. Yeah. So, yeah, that was pretty good. You mentioned in the past about fart jokes. That's where the money is. Yeah, the restaurant scene with the fat guy who barfs. So, Derek, this is like fart jokes to the extreme, because the scene basically starts with Eric Idle as a lounge singer which is just one long joke, his song.
Again, a song that's on the CD, so I knew that one. And that actually I laughed at just, again, because I knew the song.
And then Terry Gilliam's Fat Man is just one long fart joke, really. I mean, in this case, he's barfing, and it just comes out like a hose, and it's got like chunks in it. John Cleese is like wiping off the menu. It looks like oatmeal or something. It's so gross. It's like the scene in Stand By Me with Lar and the pie eating contest, where it's just like a hose coming out.
Yeah.
So I think the barf scene is pretty memorable to a lot of people just because it's such an extreme take on everything. But then again, it's so disjointed because the last bit of the movie, again, it's just weird. Like the Grim Reaper scene is weird.
Yeah. And again, not funny. Like I'm watching it sort of going, where are they going with this? Like, what's the point of this sketch? And no, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't get it, but it seemed odd and out of place. Like, you knew the movie's called The Meaning of Life. They're going through the stages of life. So, there's eventually going to be a death component, but there had to be a funnier way to do that. Yeah. And they take him into this hotel in heaven, and it's weird. And that final musical number with Graham Chapman with the fake white teeth, it was just weird and disjointed. To say overall, I thought there was a few nuggets of good stuff in it, but overall, this movie kind of sucks. It really does, which is unfortunate because I do have fond memories of Monty Python as a general rule of thumb. But and I wanted to get them into the podcast, so and this is the only way I could seem to be able to do it. But it's unfortunate because I didn't think this movie was very good. Yeah, I stick with my original comment. It was terrible. Yeah, it wasn't that good. Do you want to give it a rating out of 10? I think I'd probably give it a 4 out of 10 because the songs give it some points, and there were a couple of memorable, decent sketches in there, but they were few and far between. I think 4 is very generous. It's funny. That's more of a it's more of a legacy. When the guy wins the Oscar for a crappy movie, and they're like, well, this is for his body of work. This 4 out of 10 I'm giving them is for their body of work. Yeah, I think the number I wrote down was 4 as well. I think it's more like a 2, but I think because it's Monty Python, I'll bump it up to a 4 for them. But overall, not very good. All right, on that note, let's have some
fun with Caveman.
All right, my friend, I'm going to relax and I'm going to turn things over to you for trivia. What have you got for us tonight? All right, we're going to play a favorite game of ours called Pick the Flick. Yes. Pick the Flick. Yeah, pick the flick. You get the synopsis, then pick the flick. You get the year, pick the flick. All right, how's this going to work? All right, well, I do want to say that I'm sympathizing with Yancey a lot because you stepped on a lot of this trivia as you were talking about Monty Python. Sorry. And I should have known better, and I should have made the trivia a little more off center or a little harder, but it is where it is. We're going to stick with it. So, as you mentioned, the cast members of Monty Python's Flying Circus appeared in a number of movies that were not Monty Python movies. True. So I'm going to read you the synopsis of some films. Okay. And they'll give you the year it came out. And each one of these stars at least one member of the Monty Python's troupe. Okay. I've got 8 movies on the list. And then after that, I've got a much shorter list of movies that are all directed by a Monty Python cast member. Oh, cool. Okay. So first, we're just going to do they are in the movie. Okay. All right. So this first one is from I'm sorry, some of these are a little outside of your comfort zone, but they did work after 1989. So, do your best. All right. This one's from 1997. Zookeepers struggle to deal with the policies of a changing director. From 1997? Yes. Zookeepers. It starred John Cleese and Michael Palin. Was it Fierce Creatures? Yes. Oh, yes. It was the sequel. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, it was sort of the sequel, not a sequel. It's almost the same cast from one of the other ones. I struggled with it because I didn't see that movie. Yeah. So it wasn't bad. It came out when I was at Blockbuster Video. It wasn't as good as their other stuff, but it was pretty decent. Right. Okay. This one, it's from 2001. Big movie.
possibly one of the number 1 or number 2 movies of the year. An orphaned boy enrolls in a special school where he learns the truth about himself, his family, and the terrible things that exist in the world.
John Cleese was in the first Harry Potter film, so I would say
He sure was.
Yeah.
Yep. He was nearly Headless Nick. I think he appeared in most, if not all of them. He had a very small role. It certainly wouldn't go, let's go see that new John Cleese movie, Harry Potter. But anyway, made the list. All right. This next one's from 1990.
Okay.
Two criminals want out, but their boss kills those who leave. When the men are ordered to rob the triad, they keep the money and hide from their boss, the triad, and the police at a convent.
I don't know that one.
Starred Eric Idle.
Nope.
The movie was called Nuns on the Run.
Oh, Nuns on the Run. Oh my God, interesting.
All right. This next one, I actually really like this one. This one's from 2001.
Okay.
A Las Vegas casino magnate determined to find a new avenue for wagering sets up a race for money. And it stars John Cleese.
Oh God, I have no idea. That doesn't connect to me, so I don't know.
It's called Rat Race.
Oh,
and
never heard of it.
Pretty funny.
Oh, yeah?
It's kind of a who's who of B-level comedians that were around in 2001. It's got a huge cast. Mr. Bean's got a big part in it. Anyway, it was pretty funny. All right, this one's a little bit of a cheat. This is a cartoon from 2007, and two of the Monty Python guys do voices. Reluctantly designated as the heir to his new homeland, our hero hatches a plan to install a rebellious youngster as the new king, while the hero's wife tries to fend off a coup d'etat by the lover she previously jilted at the altar.
Is it Shrek?
It is one of the Shreks.
Oh, is it
Which part?
Shrek 2?
Nope. Shrek 3. Well, it's Shrek the Third.
Okay.
I believe is the third part. John Cleese does the voice of the king, and Eric Idle is the voice of Merlin. All right. 1993. This one might be a little tougher. A duke dies and leaves the title and wealth to his adult son. But who's the real son? The found baby raised in the USA or the abandoned baby raised by a Hindi family in London?
Oh, I think
comedy follows.
I think I know that this is Splitting Heirs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's got Eric Idle and John Cleese.
Yeah.
All right. This is another one that's sort of a cheat.
Okay.
From 1999, a famous spy uncovers a nuclear plot while protecting an oil heiress from her former kidnapper, an international terrorist who can't feel pain.
Oh, God, from 99?
Yeah, it's got John Cleese in a small part.
I don't know.
It's a James Bond film called The World Is Not Enough.
Oh, I figured it was a Bond film, but I didn't know which one was in 99. So, interesting.
They introduced John Cleese into those near the end of the Pierce Brosnan run. All right. The last one before we get into the director stuff. 1983. I guarantee you're going to get this one right in your wheelhouse. After serving 2 decades in prison, an aged pirate breaks out, determined to recover the treasure that he buried so long ago, alongside his son, old crew, and the British Navy.
That's Yellowbeard.
Yes, it is.
Nice.
Graham Chapman as the title character Yellowbeard, and Eric Idle is also in that one. All right. So most of those ones were a little outside your comfort zone, so you didn't do too well, but I think you'll do amazing on this next part. Okay, so I've got 7 movies here that were directed or co-directed by at least one member of the Monty Python crew. In no particular order, that's the common thread here. Is they were all directed by one of the guys, at least one of the guys. The first one, this one we actually did on our podcast. It's from 1995. In a future world devastated by disease, a convict is sent back in time to gather information about the man-made virus that wiped out most of the human population on the planet.
That was 12 Monkeys? Yes, it was directed by Gilliam, right?
It was indeed, yes.
Yeah. I remember,
right.
you had me watch that. It was pretty good.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. They made a TV series spun off from that, which I never watched, but it got good reviews. All right. Again, you should do well on this one. 1988, right in your sweet spot. In London, 4 very different people team up on a jewel heist, then try to double-cross one another for the loot, complicated by their efforts to fool a very proper barrister.
That was A Fish Called Wanda.
Was A Fish Called Wanda, which was co-directed by John Cleese.
Yes.
I did not know. Also starring John Cleese and Michael Palin. And Academy Award winner Jamie Lee Curtis, but obviously she's not a part of Monty Python. All right, 1985. A bureaucrat in a dystopic society becomes an enemy of the state as he pursues the woman of his dreams.
That was Brazil.
It was. Also directed by Terry Gilliam. Yeah. Features Michael Palin, and Terry Gilliam has a small guest spot in that one as well. Mm-hmm. All right, a little tougher. 1998. An oddball journalist and his psychopathic lawyer travel to the city of sin for a series of psychedelic escapades.
Ooh. I don't know.
Directed by Terry Gilliam, and it's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Ooh, he did direct that too. That's right.
Yeah, I totally forgot he directed that until I looked him up. All right, 1988. An account of the hero's supposed travels and fantastical experiences across late 18th century Europe with his band of misfits.
The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Yes, directed by Gilliam. And again, Eric Idle had a part, and Gilliam himself had a small guest
That's
part.
right.
All right. We only got a couple more to go. From 1991, a former radio DJ, suicidally despondent because of a terrible mistake he made, finds redemption in helping a deranged homeless man who was an unwitting victim of that mistake.
Oh, it was The Fisher King. That was Gilliam.
Directed by Terry Gilliam.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. This one, I don't know. You're either going to get it or you're going to have no idea. I think you're going to get this one. 1978.
Wow.
Directed by a member of the troupe.
Okay.
Charts the adventures of possibly the most famous band of all time.
I almost want to say it was the Ruddles.
It was.
Directed by Eric Idle.
Eric Idle co-directed it. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Very good.
Yeah. Eric Idle, Michael Palin both had multiple parts in it.
They did. If you remember when we did our podcast on favorite movies about music, that was my number one. I love the Ruddles.
That's why I was like, oh, Chris is going to get that.
Yeah.
All right. Last one. Nice, easy one.
Okay.
Slow ball right over the plate so you can crank it out of the park. From 1981. A young boy accidentally joins a band of time-traveling dwarves as they jump from era to era looking for treasure to steal.
And you know what? I love this movie. It was so good. Time Bandits.
Yeah, and it's another one we did on the podcast.
Oh, it's so good.
Directed by Terry Gilliam, and it's got Michael Palin and John Cleese. John Cleese as Robin Hood.
Oh, he was so good. Jolly good.
Yeah.
How long have you been a robber? 4'1". Oh, jolly good. It's so good. I love that movie. It's so good. And you know what? I've shown that movie to my kids, and they love it too. It's so unique and bizarre. Terry Gilliam had a real way when he directed things of using like practical special effects in ways that even I watching it, I'm like, how do you do that? Like, oh, so good. So.
Yeah. I knew the ones with the first part of that trivia with a lot of the stuff from the 90s, it was going to be tough because I know you don't know a lot of those movies, but I figured you would get the director. You got all the director ones, so I figured you were going to. So good job. Oh, you missed Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. But again, that was from the 90s.
No, exactly. So go figure. So overall, I thought I did pretty good on that one. So what do you say next time when we come back? We'll do a topic on something. We'll figure out what.
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan, and then we'll look at some more movies celebrating anniversaries. We're getting close to the end of the calendar year.
We're getting there. We're getting there, and then next year we'll have to come up with a new hook for what some of the things we're going to do. You know, we'll come up with that. But until we come up with that, I'm Chris McBride. That's Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.